Hey there, fellow thrill seekers. Welcome back to Silent Screams, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of urban legends. Tonight, we're exploring a tale that's been whispered in shadowy alleys and around campfires for generations. So, grab your blankets, lock your doors, and prepare to lose some sleep. This is Whispers in the Dark, terrifying urban legends come to life. I never believed in urban legends. They were just stories, right? Tall tales meant to scare kids and give adults a cheap thrill. But that was before last summer, before the night that changed everything. It started innocently enough. My best friend, Jake, and I were hanging out in his basement, scrolling through creepypasta forums and laughing at the ridiculous stories people came up with. That's when we stumbled upon an old thread about a local legend, the Hookman of Willow Creek Bridge. Dude, have you ever heard of this? Jake asked, his eyes glued to the screen. I leaned in, skimming the post. Nah, sounds like the same old urban legend crap. Guy with a hook for a hand, killing teenagers making out in cars. Classic. Jake grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. We should check it out. I rolled my eyes. Seriously? It's just a stupid story. Come on, where's your sense of adventure? It'll be fun. We'll drive out there, maybe scare ourselves a little, then grab some late-night burgers. What do you say? Against my better judgment, I agreed. We hopped into Jake's beat-up Corolla and headed for Willow Creek Bridge, about 30 minutes outside of town. The sun had long since set, and a thin fog was rolling in as we drove down the winding country road. Perfect horror movie weather, Jake chuckled, turning off the headlights for a second before quickly flicking them back on. Ooh, spooky. I punched him in the arm. Knock it off, man. You're gonna get us killed before any urban legend has a chance. We pulled up to the bridge, the old wooden structure creaking ominously in the night breeze. Jake parked the car at the edge, leaving the engine running. So, what now? I asked, peering out into the darkness. Jake shrugged. I don't know. Maybe we should tell the story? Isn't that how you summon urban legends or whatever? I snorted. Yeah, sure. Why not? We sat there for a few minutes, recounting the tale of the Hookman between nervous laughs. Nothing happened, of course. Just crickets chirping and the occasional rustle of leaves. Well, this was anticlimactic, I said, reaching for the radio. Can we go get those burgers now? That's when we heard it, a sharp, metallic scraping sound coming from somewhere behind us. Jake's eyes widened. Did you hear that? I nodded, my heart suddenly racing. It's probably just an animal or something. The scraping came again, louder this time, followed by a low, guttural growl that definitely didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard. Start the car, I whispered urgently. Jake fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. The engine sputtered once, twice, but wouldn't turn over. Come on, Jake muttered, trying again. The scraping was getting closer now, accompanied by heavy footsteps. I glanced in the side mirror and felt my blood run cold. There, in the faint moonlight, I saw a hulking figure limping towards us. And where its right hand should have been, there was only a gleaming, curved hook. Jake, I hissed, it's real. The Hookman is real. Jake looked up, his face pale with terror. No way, man. This isn't funny. But as the figure drew nearer, there was no denying what we were seeing. The hookman raised his hook, moonlight glinting off the polished metal, and let out a bone-chilling roar. Go, 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 I screamed. Jake slammed his foot on the gas, tires squealing as we peeled away from the bridge. I looked back just in time to see the hookman's furious face, his eyes glowing an unnatural red in the darkness. We didn't stop driving until we were back in town, both of us shaking and breathless. We sat in silence for a long moment, trying to process what we'd just experienced. That couldn't have been real, Jake finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. I don't know, man. But I know what I saw. We agreed to never speak of that night again, to chalk it up to an overactive imagination and too many horror movies. But in the weeks that followed, strange things started happening. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of metal scraping against my bedroom window. Jake swore he saw a hulking figure with a hook for a hand lurking in the shadows of the school parking lot. And one by one, the other urban legends we'd laughed about that night began to manifest in our lives. There was the girl who appeared in Jake's rearview mirror during a late-night drive, only to vanish when he pulled over to help her. The strange voicemail I received, filled with static and a whispered message that, when played backward, said, I'm coming for you. It was like we'd opened a door to something dark and ancient, something that had always been there, waiting for someone foolish enough to believe. Now, as I sit here recording this, I can hear that familiar scraping sound outside my window. The urban legends aren't just stories anymore. They're real, and they're coming for us. So let this be a warning to all of you listening. The next time you hear a spooky tale or come across a creepy internet post, think twice before dismissing it. Because sometimes, the line between legend and reality is thinner than we'd like to believe. This is Silent Screams, signing off for now. Stay safe out there, and remember, some stories are better left untold. But our tale doesn't end there, dear listeners. Oh no, it's only just beginning. You see, after that night at Willow Creek Bridge, Jake and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Followed. Hunted. It started small at first. Jake would find strange scratches on his car door in the morning, too deep and purposeful to be accidental. I'd come home to find my bedroom window open, even though I distinctly remembered locking it before leaving for school. We tried to rationalize it, to convince ourselves it was all in our heads. But deep down, we knew the truth. The urban legends we'd mocked were no longer content to stay in the realm of campfire stories. They wanted revenge. One night, about a week after our encounter with the hookman, I was home alone, trying to distract myself with mindless TV. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Dude, I think someone's in my house. I keep hearing footsteps upstairs, but my parents are out of town. I felt my blood run cold. Call the cops, I texted back immediately. I did. They're on their way. But what? I just heard something that sounded like a hook scraping against the wall. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. Get out of there now. No response. Jake? Still nothing. I was about to call him when another text came through. But this one wasn't from Jake's number. It was from an unknown sender, and it contained just 4 words, your friend is gone. Panic seized me. I tried calling Jake, but it went straight to voicemail. I was debating whether to call the police or rush over there myself when I heard it, that now familiar scraping sound, coming from just outside my front door. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly approached the door, heart pounding in my ears. Through the peephole, I saw nothing but darkness. Then, suddenly, a face pressed against the glass, distorted and horrifying. It was Jake, but not Jake. His eyes were blank, his skin pale and waxy. And when he opened his mouth to speak, I saw rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Let me in," Jake's voice rasped, but it wasn't quite his voice anymore. It was older, colder, filled with malice. "Don't you want to hear about the legends?" I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet in my haste to get away. That's when I noticed the shadows in my living room were moving, writhing, taking shape. From the darkness emerged figures I recognized from countless urban legends. The girl from the babysitter and the man upstairs, her face frozen in a silent scream. The grotesque dog-like creature from the licked hand, its tongue lolling obscenely. And there, in the center of it all, stood the hook man, his metal appendage gleaming in the dim light. "You wanted proof," the hook man growled, his voice like gravel. "You wanted to see if the stories were true. Well, here we are, boy. All of us. Ready to make you a part of our legends." I ran, of course. Bolted for the back door, praying I could make it to my car. But as I burst out into the night, I realized with growing horror that the entire street had changed. Houses were now decrepit, abandoned shells. Mist curled around my ankles, and in the distance, I could hear the mournful howl of something that was definitely not a dog. I've been running ever since, dear listeners. Moving from town to town, never staying in one place for too long. Because they're always right behind me, waiting for me to let my guard down. The urban legends, the creatures from our worst nightmares, they're all real. And they're hungry for new stories, new victims to add to their twisted mythology. So the next time you're sitting around a campfire, sharing spooky tales, remember this: some legends don't want to stay on the page. Some legends want to reach out and drag you into their world. And once they've got you, there's no coming back. This is Silent Screams, and I'm still running. If you're out there, Jake, if any part of you is still human, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't stop now. I hear them coming, their whispers growing louder in the dark. The scraping of the hookman's metal appendage against concrete, the ghostly giggles of Bloody Mary, the howl of the Wendigo in the distance. They're closing in, and I don't know how much longer I can. Wait. Did you hear that? That sound, just now, like fingernails on a chalkboard. Oh God, they've found me. They're here. I have to go. Remember, don't dig too deep into the urban legends. Don't go looking for proof. Because if you do, you might just find it. And trust me, you don't want that. You don't want to end up like... Static crackles, then clears. Hey, Silent Screams listeners. If you're hearing this, it means, well, I'm not sure what it means. I don't know how long it's been since my last broadcast or how I managed to get this recording out. Time doesn't work the same way here, in this place between reality and nightmare. After that night when they found me, when the urban legends dragged me into their world, I thought it was over. But death would have been a mercy compared to what I've experienced. I've been trapped in a twisted landscape where every horror story, every creepypasta, every whispered legend comes to life. It's like someone took all the darkest corners of human imagination and stitched them together into a horrifying patchwork reality. One moment, I'm running through a fog-shrouded forest, the branches reaching out like gnarled fingers trying to snag my clothes. The next, I'm in an abandoned hospital, the flickering fluorescent lights revealing glimpses of mutilated patients that disappear when I blink. And always, there are the voices. Whispering, cackling, screaming, a constant chorus of terror that threatens to drive me insane. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me try to explain what happened after they caught me. The hookman was the first to reach me, his metal appendage sinking into my shoulder with a sickening crunch. I screamed, the pain white-hot and blinding. But instead of blood, shadows poured from the wound, enveloping me in darkness. When I could see again, I was somewhere else. A vast, empty plain stretched out in all directions, the ground a patchwork of dead grass and cracked earth. The sky above was a roiling mass of storm clouds, flashing with unnatural colors, sickly greens and deep purples that hurt to look at. "Welcome home," a voice rasped behind me. I spun around to find myself face to face with a creature that could only be described as a living urban legend. It wore the patchwork faces of a dozen different monsters, constantly shifting and reforming. What are you?" I managed to choke out. The thing's mouth, or rather, mouths, twisted into a grotesque smile. "We are the storytellers," it said, its voice a cacophony of whispers and screams. "We are the keepers of fears, the weavers of nightmares. And you, little skeptic, have been chosen to join our ranks." Before I could react, tendrils of darkness shot out from the creature's body, wrapping around my limbs and burrowing into my skin. I felt my body changing, twisting, becoming something other. "No!" I screamed, fighting against the transformation. "I won't become like you." The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass and children crying. "Oh, but you already are. You've been one of us since the moment you first whispered a scary story in the dark. We've just been waiting for you to realize it." I'd like to say I fought harder, that I resisted the change. But the truth is, as the darkness seeped into my very being, I felt a sick thrill of excitement. All the fear, all the terror I'd been running from, it was becoming a part of me. And it felt right. That's when the real horror began. I found myself thrust into an endless cycle of urban legends, forced to play out every role. Sometimes I was the victim, sometimes the monster, and sometimes, most terrifyingly, I was both. I've been the hitchhiker that vanishes from the backseat of a car, leaving nothing but a chill in the air. I've been the babysitter who discovers the calls are coming from inside the house. I've even been the hook on the car door, my consciousness trapped in cold metal, yearning for warm flesh. Each story, each legend, adds another layer to my being. I'm no longer just myself, I'm a composite of every fear, every nightmare that's ever kept someone awake at night. But here's the truly terrifying part, dear listeners. As I've lived through these stories, I've begun to understand the truth behind them. These aren't just tales we tell to scare ourselves. They're warnings. Glimpses into a reality that exists alongside our own, separated by a veil that's growing thinner by the day. The storytellers, the beings that brought me here, they're not content with just existing in this shadow realm. They're hungry, always hungry for new fears, new stories to add to their repertoire. And they've set their sights on your world. That's why I'm reaching out, why I'm risking everything to get this message to you. The barrier between our worlds is weakening. Soon, the things that go bump in the night won't be content to stay in the shadows. They'll come for you, just like they came for me. But there's hope. A chance to stop this before it's too late. You see, I've learned something in my time here. These creatures, these living legends, they feed on belief. The more we fear them, the stronger they become. But if we face our fears, if we shine a light on the darkness, we can weaken them. So the next time you hear a scary story, the next time you feel that prickle of fear on the back of your neck, don't run. Don't hide. Stand your ground. Look the darkness in the eye and say, I'm not afraid of you. It won't be easy. Trust me, I know. The temptation to give in to the fear, to let it consume you, is almost overwhelming. But you have to resist. For your sake, and for the sake of everyone you love. Because if we don't all stand together against this tide of terror, then the world you know will cease to exist. Reality will become a nightmare, and every day will be Halloween. I can feel them coming now. The storytellers know what I'm doing, and they're not happy. I don't know how much longer I can hold them off. Remember, silent screams, listeners. You are stronger than your fears. You are braver than you know. And together, we can. The recording cuts off abruptly, replaced by a cacophony of inhuman screams and whispers. Then, silence. A moment passes, and a new voice speaks, familiar, yet changed. It's the original narrator, but there's an otherworldly quality to their tone now. Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could simply choose not to believe? Oh, my dear, sweet listeners. You've already invited us in. Every time you've shared one of our stories, every time you felt that delicious shiver of fear, you've been opening the door wider and wider. We are the things that lurk in the corner of your eye. We are the shadows that move when you're not looking. We are the whisper in the dark that makes your heart race. And now, thanks to your faithful narrator, we have a direct line to all of you. So gather round, children. It's story time. And trust me, you won't want to miss this tale. It's about you, after all. You, and the moment you realized that every urban legend you've ever heard is absolutely true. Sleep tight, silent screams, listeners. We'll see you in your nightmares.